Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. My name is Chuck Guglielmo, a weekly interview show where we talk with interesting people around the community. And today I thought we'd do a little switch. The other day you saw Paul being interviewed by me. Today we're going to turn it around and have Paul Guglielmo interview me, and I'm very nervous about it because I have no idea what he's going to ask. I can only think that some of it will be sports. But you're on your show. Go.
Welcome to Around Town with Paul. I'm Paul Guglielmo, and today I'll be talking to this guy right here, Chuck Guglielmo. Chuck, you're from Conneaut, right?
Yes.
Born and raised in Conneaut?
Born and raised in Conneaut, Ohio on September 3rd, 1954.
Where did you grow up? What neighborhood?
We grew up on West Adams Street, which is the street just west of Conneaut High School's Garcia Gymnasium.
Uh-huh. And is that where you lived your whole life, or did you move anywhere?
No, we lived there. We moved out of there in 1962, so about 8 years old. Then we moved to Depot Street in Conneaut, where we had a lot of train noise.
So you moved about a quarter of a mile away?
Yes.
Yeah.
We moved about 2 blocks away.
Right.
Yeah.
What was life like for a young Chuck Guglielmo? I mean, tell me about your childhood. How did you spend, a Saturday in the middle of the summer?
Well, that's a good question. You're asking me to go back a lot of years.
Did you go out and play, or did you stay home?
Yeah, we had some friends down the street, and we would play marble games and baseball games and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah. And how did your interests change when you became a little older? You became a teenager and whatnot, and went to high school.
I became a big-time sports fan, which I don't recall. You know, kids today, 8, 9, 10 years old, they're into sports.
Yeah.
Following professional sports teams. I think I was I was 13 years old when I first got interested in the Cleveland Indians, so that would have been 1968.
Now, do you remember the moment you fell in love with the Cleveland Indians?
1968.
But do you remember, was it a specific game? Do you remember the first time you watched or listened to a game and said, I'm really interested?
Yeah, it was not the start of the season of 1968. Somewhere in the middle of the season, the Indians were playing the Tigers, and I got both radio feeds, the Indians feed and the Tigers feed, and I would go back and forth. If the Indians did something good, I hurried up and switched over to WJR in Detroit at the time, which was 76 AM.
Uh-huh.
And then if the Tigers did something good, I'd switch back over to the Indians to hear what they had to say.
Now, you would have been about, what, you're a teenager at the
13.
time, right? About 13 years old.
And back in those days on AM radio, I had to put my ear, especially at night games, up to the radio because of so much static.
Now, over the years, as a Cleveland Indians fan, and I want to come back to your childhood and kind of talk about you as a person beyond that, but let's go off into the Indians side of things for a little while. What was it about the game? You loved broadcasting, right? But also baseball. So, is it because those two things come together that you love Cleveland Indians so much, because it's broadcasting and baseball, or is one or the other thing the more important thing?
I think the passion I have for baseball is just incredible. I just love the game so much. But I understand the people who say they don't because it's slow. It's a slow-paced game. There's not much action, and that's all very, very true.
Yeah.
That's why I sit in my living room.
Right.
That's why I watch every single Indians game, and I broadcast pitch by pitch because that keeps me into the game. That's one reason. The other reason is I don't particularly care for my Indians television announcers.
Whoa, people are seeing this, right?
Right.
This is
right.
public.
I hope Matt Underwood and Rick Manning are watching.
Yeah, I don't. Rick and Matt, I think you guys are great. Chuck, as a Cleveland Indians fan, as a baseball fan, you just mentioned the criticism. There is some criticism on baseball as a slow sport.
Yes.
Can I ask you, in all honesty, wouldn't 3 innings be plenty?
3 innings? I'll tell you what, Paul, the answer to that question would be if I have the lead.
Yeah. All right. No, in all seriousness, baseball, and I know now, getting more into sort of modern talk about baseball, I know that there's been talk recently, attendance is down, but the problem is revenue is up because of television deals. Baseball teams are catering more and more to high-end clientele. There's more suites, loges, VIP packages than there used to be. The common man is almost being left out of baseball because the other thing, the actual game has changed. There's more strikeouts than ever before, and there's more home runs than ever before. Is baseball in trouble?
In a minute, I'll answer that. But I think at one time, I know there was more strikeouts than there were hits. And I think that's never been done in the history of Major League Baseball. Is Major League Baseball in trouble? No, as long as you got your New York Yankees, your Los Angeles Dodgers, your Boston, your big major market cities, baseball will never die.
Sure. Yeah.
It may die with the young, but it's not going to die with 40 years and older people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but eventually those people will be gone, and my generation will be there, and you have to wonder a little. What about the actual experience of going to the ballpark? As I mentioned, the regular kind of working family is almost being priced out of baseball, or they're being stuck into outfield corners at this point. And if you want to experience a baseball game, at this point, you got to shell out some big bucks. Yeah. Now, that's something that the NFL and the NBA have taken major criticism for. It's expensive to go to a professional sporting game. Baseball, for a long time, was the exception. Baseball was the sport that you could go to for a little bit more of an affordable price.
Basically because it's every day.
Yeah.
But that's where the average family that wants to go to a baseball game, they got to take advantage. They need to look at the promotional schedule, and they need to plan their days on where they're going to get not only a game, but they're going to get dollar dogs, they're going to get jerseys, they're going to get fireworks. Sometimes the Indians do that every Friday night, all three of those.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do.
Now let's talk about the actual Cleveland Indians ball club. I want to get into the current situation. We'll talk about that in a moment. But since 1968 to 2018, by the way, your 50th anniversary of 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
50th anniversary of being a Cleveland Indians fan.
50 years.
In 50 years.
Yes.
I want you to give me one. What year was your favorite Cleveland Indians team?
That has to be 1995, because it's the first time since 68 to 95 that I've ever seen the Cleveland Indians make the playoffs. And they went all the way to Game 6 of the World Series against the Atlanta Braves.
That was your favorite team of all time. What about your favorite Cleveland Indians player from 1968 to 2018?
That's an outstanding question. That is really an outstanding question. I know a lot of people would pick Jim Thome, a lot of people would pick Omar Vizquel, a lot of people would pick Kenny Lofton, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those are great players. I think I like Roberto Alomar.
Right. Yeah, especially because we had Sandy before. Roberto had been an Oriole and a Blue Jay, I think.
An Oriole and a Blue Jay.
And then he came and united with Sandy, still in his prime.
Yes.
And it was when we were good.
Absolutely.
So I notice most of what you're saying is more modern era. I mean, from mid-'90s on. So from 68 to the early 90s, what did you think of Cleveland Indians baseball? They weren't producing winners for you.
Yeah, that's the diehard in me.
Yeah.
I was watching all those years. I think the highest I ever came in was third place. And they didn't have divisions back in those 60s and 70s. It was either American League and National League.
Right. And so how did the playoffs work? Just the top 4 teams would get in that time? So let's get into some modern talk now. Let's start with 2016. The Indians make it back to the World Series. They are red hot in that year in 2016. They got hot when it was, and a lot of times that happens in all pro sports. Teams, the cream does rise to the top, but a lot of times it'll happen where by the time you get to the playoffs, it's whoever can get hot right now. And the Indians got hot right now in October of 2016, made it all the way to the World Series, made it all the way to Game 7, had an opportunity after opportunity to close out that series and win that thing. I just want to ask you a pretty open-ended question. Talk about it all you want. 2016 World Series, what happened?
Well, I know one thing that happened. Thanks to you, in Game 2 of that 2016 World Series, you made it happen that I was going to go see a World Series game, and how you made it happen was extra special because you had called me at work. I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning and said to me, how would you like to go to a World Series game? And I said, Paul, you're crazy. They're sold out. There's no way that's going to happen. He says, well, you're going to the World Series at 8 o'clock because you managed to purchase a couple of excellent seats, by the way, for the World Series. And the only thing bad about that, Paul, is I was tearing up when you were telling me that, is I looked at the clock at work the rest of the day, and the hours never moved by.
Right, that's right.
And it was, if I remember right, it was just a cloudy day. There was even a chance that the game wouldn't be played.
Yeah.
So gloomy, but yet no rain.
And do you remember, a sign from God, they moved that game up an hour.
They did.
Yeah.
And you went all the way back to Rochester.
Because I had to drive back to Rochester, New York that night. And do radio at 6 a.m.
Yeah, and got back about an hour before you were supposed to go on the air.
Yeah, and so I drove from that downtown Cleveland. You drove to Conneaut. and I was able to get about a 45-minute nap during that time. But then I took over and drove from Connie out to Rochester and got to work at something like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, and then was on the air at 6 a.m., which was cool, though, as a broadcaster. It was hard on me physically, but it was cool as a broadcaster to be on the air in Rochester, New York, and have been last night at the thing that everyone watched on television. That was really cool.
I've seen a lot of bad baseball of the Indians, but 1995, 1997, and 2016. So I did see them go to the World Series 3 times. They lost all 3 times.
Yep.
2 of those in the 10th inning of Game 7.
2017. The Indians are hot. They're a favorite. They're the American League favorite. First round, New York Yankees knock them out. Same question. What happened?
2 games to none.
Up 2 games to none. They choked again.
Well,
what happened?
I see you use the term choke.
I have to tell you,
you like that term choke.
I like it when it comes to the Indians because they keep doing it.
What happened, in my opinion, they didn't hit. They simply did not hit. And I'm talking about their 2 best hitters, Jose Ramirez and Francisco Lindor.
Yeah.
Lindor had the grand slam in Game 2, but outside of that, they did not hit.
Yeah.
And Corey Kluber in 2 games did not pitch like Corey Kluber. He was blown out early by New York.
I have to this day, I've blamed Mickey Callaway, who was our pitching coach this year. He's the head coach of the New York Mets, and we see what he's doing there. It's not good in New York. I blame Mickey Callaway because in Major League Baseball, these guys play so many games that scouting reports are something they glance at before they go out and play a game in mid-July in Kansas City, right? But in the playoffs, the scouting reports are so thorough that those New York Yankees knew exactly what Corey Kluber was going to throw at them. And Mickey Callaway was interviewed before the second game that Kluber pitched. He pitched Game 1, and he pitched Game 5, right?
Yes.
He was interviewed before that second game, asked what adjustments Corey would be making. You know what Mickey Callaway said? We would never adjust anything because Corey Kluber got us here, and Corey Kluber will get us beyond this point. And you know what the New York Yankees said behind the scenes? Thank you. Because we know exactly what he's going to throw at us. And in the very first inning, Didi Gregorius went yard. Gregorius makes Yankee fans euphorious, as
John Sterling.
John Sterling would say on WFAN radio.
Yeah.
And from that point on, the Indians couldn't win that game.
Yeah.
I believe that home run, it was already over.
Well, all I know is that when you're up 2 games to none, you're feeling real good about yourselves, especially when you got Corey Kluber on the mound.
Yep.
And I know the Indians say that he had back issues, but if you had back issues, why did you start him? And as far as Mickey Callaway goes, everything you said about him, I totally disagree. He's the best pitching coach the Cleveland Indians have ever had.
All right. Last Cleveland Indians question, because I want to get back to your life a little bit. We've gone on an Indians tangent.
Life's boring, but
the thing is, you have to understand about Chuck Guglielmo is the Indians are half of his life.
Yes.
So this deserves this much time. 2018, we're in it right now.
Yes.
The Indians at this point have, there's been some criticism in the sense that they're in the weakest division in baseball. They, at one point, I think maybe a month ago or so, had a record that would have been good enough for 4th place in some of the other divisions, yet they happen to be in the AL Central and happen to be a first-place team. Hey, listen, we'll take it. We'll just get into the playoffs and get hot at the right time. That's what it's about. Let me turn it over to you and ask you, 2018. Are these Indians in good shape? What do they need to do? What's going to happen? Are we going to see these guys make a run, or are they going to fizzle out again?
Well, I'll tell you what. If Major League Baseball made the Cleveland Indians play every single one of their games at Progressive Field, nobody's going to beat them. They would be the World Series championship team. You put them on the road, it's a completely different team. They don't score, they don't hit, especially where they're at this weekend out in Oakland. They just stumble on the road. I don't know what it is, but if there ever was a home field advantage in baseball, the Indians have certainly proven there is this year.
Yeah.
What is the prognosis for them? I think obviously they're going to win the division. One of the reasons they're going to win it because they are in a weak division. That's the division they play in. They have to play the teams that they're told to play.
Right.
Those are the teams you need to beat if you want to be a contender. They definitely will get in the playoffs. And the best thing about them is they're going to avoid a 1-game playoff because they're not going to be a wild card team. So one of those super teams, there's about 3 or 4 of them that could win 100 games. 2 of those teams aren't going to make it into that 5-game series.
Sure, yeah. That's right.
I think their chances are pretty good if they play Houston. The last 2 years, They have played well against the World Series champion Houston Astros. I do not like their chances against the New York Yankees. I'll take my chances with Boston and Seattle.
Okay. Let's veer back to the life of Chuck Guglielmo. We went off on a tangent when you fell in love with the Cleveland Indians, but again, well-deserved if you know Chuck. What did you do after high school?
Went to work.
Right. Did you ever consider college?
No. And you know why?
Why?
It's not because my parents didn't want me to go to college. They certainly would support me to go. You know me. I was fearful. I didn't want to leave home. I was afraid to go to college. I don't know if I could live on my own in a dorm. Back then. Today, I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, he stole my joke. I said, we don't know if you could live on your own now.
I don't think so. We went through that experience earlier this year.
Yeah, right. When Mom had to be out of town a lot, After high school, you go into work. Where did you work right away?
After high school, we started at MCO Wheaton.
MCO Wheaton.
In Conneaut back in June 26th, 1973, 97 degrees in a foundry. And at the end of the day, I went up and told my superintendent, I think I have to quit. I can't take this.
Did you quit?
I did not quit. He talked me. He said, stick it out. Give it a week or two. This just happens to be the hottest day of the year in a place that's already have their furnaces on. I said, I can't take this. He said, give it a couple weeks. I did. Been working ever since.
And what did MCO Wheaton do? What did you make?
We made petroleum gas nozzles.
Okay.
It dealt with petroleum products.
Eventually MCO Wheaton folds, right?
Yes, 1988. So I was there from 73 to 88. Not just in the foundry. We started in the foundry, but my love of my work was working in the storeroom there. Loved doing that.
And that was so people from the other parts of the factory come to you for the pieces they need?
Yes, exactly.
And you
then I had
maintain
to control the inventory and order the parts that we need and stuff like that. Really love that.
What happens now in 1988, you have one son, your handsome son, I believe, Paul.
Actually, I had two sons in 1988.
You had a second son, 1987, David is born, so he's a baby at the time.
Right.
And I'm, of course, young at that time. And in 1988, what happens?
Well, there's nothing good about losing your job and being laid off, but in that 6-month period that I didn't have a job, it kind of worked out for my wife and I because she was able to go back to work, and I was there to raise David for a 6-month period. And then by that time, I was fortunate to find another job. We both were working, and our cousin Kathy Loomis was our babysitter for David.
During that 6-month period, although the timing worked out, you know that this can't last forever. You have to find a job. Were you panicked at all during that time, or were you comfortable? How hard was your job search, and how vigorous were you going?
Well, I took the whole 6 months to find a job. I didn't really go out looking all that much. I didn't go out every day during that period because I was watching David. But we would go out once, I say we, my cousin and I would go out, Marianne, who passed away unfortunately. We would go out a couple times a week looking at jobs and going all over the place. She says, why don't you try this SCM place, which is now called Crystal. It's had many names since then. I says, oh, I'd never get in there. And I don't know if I can work with chemicals or anything. She said, just go and put your name. You don't know. 3 days later, I got a call from them and said, you want to come up for an interview? Best move ever.
Really? Yeah.
Best move.
And was that did you have, before SCM came through, did you ever get even any phone calls or job interviews before that anywhere else that you were putting in applications?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
Okay.
Or I probably would have jumped at them just to find a job.
So the SCM job comes along, and you are, what was your first role there?
My first job there was working a 3 to 11 p.m. shift, which is absolutely the worst shift you could work.
That's tough.
That's when everything happens.
Yeah.
Your school functions, your sports and everything. But when you're looking for a job, all that stuff gets put aside.
Sure.
But unfortunately, I only had to work that for a few short months. And then I was able to go into the packaging department, and then that became a rotating shift. A lot of people don't like a rotating shift, but it gets you off that straight 3 to 11 p.m. shift.
Yeah.
So you're only getting that like once a week.
You were on the swing
every
shift,
day.
they call it.
A swing shift, they call it, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not a picnic, but it's better than a straight second.
First, second, third shift, what's the best?
Depends on what job you're doing.
Yeah, because
right now, at my age, nothing's better than 7 a.m. to 3:30.
Sure. Yeah, I would say first shift for an adult, with a family, is probably the best, obviously.
My second shift would be 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
That afternoon shift, that I don't
That's
care
awful.
how old you are, that can be a good one.
No, that you're right, because that's when you miss life during those hours. You know
Your
what I mean?
grandfather would tell you differently, though.
He liked that
when
shift?
No, he didn't like it, but a swing shift, he would take second before third.
Really? See, now the one advantage to
Because
third
he wanted to go out to a bar after 11 o'clock, have a
see,
couple drinks.
and not have to wake up early the next morning,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And that was one advantage to second shift is at least you don't have to wake up early in the morning. Third shift, I would think the advantage is there's probably no managers around, right? Third shift.
There's probably one.
You're sort of on your own to just kind of do your job and quietly, and there's less going on, there's less distractions. So SCM you've been with for a long time. Now I understand regarding your work career that is it public knowledge or
Wait a
what?
minute, we've had SCM, then it went to Millennium, you're forgetting about Millennium.
That's right.
And now then Millennium Chemicals, and now Crystal, and soon to have another name.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I'll see that other name though.
Well, right, because I was going to say I don't know if it's public knowledge yet or not, but
It's not.
You have set a date.
We have set a date in my mind.
Yeah.
I've not announced a date, and the date that I have set in my mind could come sooner, but it won't come later.
So, but we can put it this way: it's July of 2018, and a year from now, all indications are you'll be retired.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
That's
right.
the plan.
Okay, and which is good. Congratulations. Okay, so that's your work career. Let's talk a little bit about. I want to talk about your personal life a little bit, and then also about this show, Around Town with Chuck. So about your personal life a little while. We already mentioned kind of how you grew up. We got into that you had kids, but we didn't dive deep into that. You married to a school teacher. Patricia's worked 30.
You know why?
Why?
I wanted to be a school teacher, and I said, darn it, if I can't be a school teacher, I'm going to marry one.
Well, you do teach to this day, don't you? Not officially, but
Yeah,
at the
Sunday school.
Sunday school.
Yeah.
How did you meet Patricia?
We set up on a blind date. I was working with a guy who's married to somebody she worked with, and they set us up on a blind date on a homecoming night, Conneaut versus Edgewood, October 26th, 1979. Very cold, windy night at the stadium in a football game. We met at halftime. We were there for the entire game. She was about 3 rows lower than me, but we still didn't know each other until halftime. They weren't going to let us meet until halftime.
Do you remember your first conversation with her?
I don't remember my first conversation with her, but I know what we did after the halftime.
What'd you do?
We went to Pape's Restaurant. Remember Pape's Restaurant?
Of course, yeah.
In Conneaut?
Well, so you left the game early.
Yep.
Well, now that's a woman right there. Took you right out of the game early.
We had a... No. We
Oh.
stayed for the whole game.
Well, then it was pretty late night then by the
Yeah, it was
time
about after 10-ish.
Look at you, Chucky. You
But-
used to go out after 10?
Well, wait a minute.
What?
We went to Pape's. We had a glass. I think your father had a glass of wine. We had pizza or something. I don't know what it was we had. So then I found out that after that very first date that she actually thought I was a jerk.
A jerk? I thought it was that you were a nerd. Which she wasn't
I think
wrong.
Maybe it was a nerd. Nerd or
Nerd.
jerk. One of those two things.
She tells it that she thought
I
you were a
mean,
bit
she
of-
wasn't wrong.
She tells it that she thought you were a nerd, not a jerk.
Maybe
but
it was a
nerd.
nerd, yeah.
Yeah.
What's
She
a
just,
nerd?
Just a little goofy, like a little.
I know why, too. Because
Yeah.
I asked her, and she says, because you kept asking school questions.
Yeah, because you were who you are today.
Now she says,
You were
I keep
interviewing.
asking baseball questions.
Yeah.
So I don't know which way to go with her.
Right. You were, what you did though, when you're in that situation, is
Well, I was nervous. I'm nervous to begin with.
very nervous, and that's normal. Anyone's nervous on a first date. You just got to keep the conversation going, because what would be death during a first date would be that awkward silence. Nobody knows what to say next.
So
Right?
when we left, took her back to her apartment, we kind of said, well, when are we going to meet again? And she mentioned the following Saturday. I had Indians tickets for that game, and I didn't know how to break that to her. I said, can we do it Friday?
Why didn't you take her to the game with you? That would have been a great date. Great date. So at what point did you then propose? How long did that take to get to that point?
Let me see. October 26th is when we met. January 26th was when we got engaged, and we got married August 2nd, 1980. So it was only 10 months.
Chuck, 3 months to propose?
That's it.
Did anybody...
That's after being called a nerd.
Right. So you did a good job by that.
After the second date, she says, much, much improved.
Did you... did anybody tell you that 3 months was rushing it at the time? Your mother, your father, your
No,
siblings?
you got to remember though. I was 25. She was 26.
Yeah, right.
It's not like you're 18 and 19.
Right, that's true. Well, I didn't get married till I was in my 30s, so. But I think now people are doing it a little bit later. It's a little more normal. You have a couple of kids, Paul, David.
Paul. Oh yeah. Oh, you. Yeah.
I have been on this show, so we don't need to go into me at all. But why don't you tell us a little bit about David?
What do you want to know?
What does he do?
David is 30 years old now, as you know.
Yeah.
I love my David. David is currently he is a juvenile probation officer for Ashtabula County, and likes it, although he recently went on one of those swing shifts we were talking about. No, it's not a swing shift, it's a straight 12-hour night shift, like 6 to 6.
Yeah.
He seems to like it, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, good.
And he's very heavy, as you know, into sports.
Right.
Not necessarily baseball, but he loves his NBA
Right.
basketball.
You've had some tragedy in your life. About 11 years ago, you lost your sister
Yes.
in a car accident. Mary Jo.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about who Mary Jo was, what she was like, and then about losing her?
Mary Jo, of course, 9 years younger than me, so she would be, what now, 55-ish?
Guess so, yeah.
54, 55-ish, just unfortunately passed away in a automobile accident. She was a girl, you know, full of fun, full of life. She was an
a lot of fun.
entertainer.
Yeah.
She was an entertainer. She had a lot of struggles in her life, didn't necessarily live a very good life. Then did found a nice man from London on the internet, I believe, Ken Rowe. And unfortunately, he decided he was going to go back to England, and he left her. And I think that's when she started to get stressed out or depressed. And it wasn't very long after that she had that automobile accident.
That's
Of course, she had 2 children, and some grandchildren as well.
You have an older brother, John.
An older brother, John. He's 4 years older than me.
He's 4 years older than you. He's been a lot. He's also been a lot of fun. He's been a drummer in a band. For
Well recognized as a longtime drummer here. Locally.
Couldn't be more opposite from you regarding sports.
Oh yeah.
He couldn't care less.
Absolutely.
Could care less.
He
Could
wouldn't
not
be
care
able
less.
to tell you the difference between a baseball and a football. I'm being facetious there, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
He's not a sports fan.
Yeah.
And he would get upset when my dad and I would talk sports.
Well, he's funny now. Johnny over the last couple of years has been funny when sports come up because he'll chime in, but just as a joke.
Yeah.
Chime in and say something like, "Oh yeah, I saw that." But Johnny also recently, there's been some sad news regarding Johnny.
His health
and
is-
people around Conneaut may have seen him and they may not know what's going on
Yeah.
and may be afraid to ask. Do you want to maybe tell people what's going on with
Yeah,
Johnny?
his health is, if you want to keep him in prayer and thought, his health is not very good right now. He suffers from ALS.
Which is Lou
It's
Gehrig's
not been all
disease.
that long, probably about a year and a half.
Yeah.
Gets around now in a motorized wheelchair,
Mm-hmm.
so and that seems to keep him pretty active as far as moving around and stuff. But not doing very well.
No, so keep Johnny in your thoughts and prayers. Let's talk a little bit about this show, Around Town with Chuck. Now, you've been involved in, I can trace it back to, and tell me if I'm wrong, your first job, as we've already discussed, you loved announcing and broadcasting. Your first job in broadcasting, was it the Conneaut High School football games? Was that your first ever public announcing job?
Well, yes.
Okay.
But the Griffith family, actually, I started with
Was
them.
that first or was football first?
Griffith was first,
That was
but
first,
that
okay.
wasn't going into the airwaves or anything. That
Sure.
was, we call it the Boyd Griffith Network.
Yeah.
We would just sit in the Garcia Gymnasium in the pews, and they would film their sons' bleachers, and they would film their sons' games and have me do the commentating.
Right.
And to this day, when I run into them, they tell me they still
Look at that.
listen to.
So your
watch it.
your first actual experience, even though it wasn't professional experience, but your first experience then was I remember you used to sit up on the top bleacher with a microphone connected to a video camera and do the play-by-play for the Conneaut High School basketball games.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, this wasn't going anywhere. This was just for their personal
family.
use. But you know that also that I think Coach Houston, not Houston, Mason, was it Mason? At the time, Coach Mason, of high school basketball coach, that he would the game tape. That was the game tape. He used.
It ended up being the game.
And your voice was on it.
Yep.
And I've been in some.
And if I had
of
to criticize them, I did.
yeah. And then when Houston came around in the mid-'90s,
Yeah.
he also then went and he would use that
I think
tape.
so.
Yeah, he used your
You
tape.
played for him, did he?
Yeah, and he used your tape, and he would. I want to tell you this.
That was on the Steve Tharp network back then, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you something that would be hurtful, but also not hurtful. Don't worry. But the beginning of what I'm going to tell you is, in general, he would turn down the volume, because he was going to talk over it and tell the team. But then every once in a while, he would tell us, just watch this quarter, and we're going to talk about the quarter afterwards. And I'm going to let you watch it uninterrupted. And he would turn the volume up. You do the play-by-play, which honestly was a bad idea because then we would get into your commentary and not concentrate so much on the X's and O's, which is what he wanted us to concentrate on. But you are also very well known as the voice of the Conneaut Spartan High School football team.
Love doing
as
that.
the PA announcer. Why don't you tell us how that came to be?
Bill Fells, our neighbor.
Yep.
was
Former athletic director?
Yes,
right?
outside raking in his yard. I'm sitting in the living room right across the street, windows open, summertime, watching the Indians. Of course, he's hearing me broadcast Indians baseball. Doorbell's ringing. I say, who's bothering me now during an Indians game? Get up to answer that. It's him. He says, hey, I'm outside. You know how Bill used to talk. I'm outside raking. I'm hearing you do this Indians game here, and I'm looking for a public address announcer for Conneaut football. You interested? Yes, sign me up now. I actually gave up some Indians to talk to him about that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And how have you enjoyed that over the years?
Still doing it.
You love it, right?
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
longest tenured in the county.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Seen bad football, seen good football, seen great football.
Give us the behind the scenes of how that works, because when a play happens, you know the ball carrier, you know who made the tackle, and you know it
With the
within
help of a spotter.
Well, I was going to say, you know it within seconds of it happening.
Yeah.
How does that magic happen behind the scenes? The thing that what's happening in the press box that we don't know about?
Well, first of all, we can't say anything while the play's going on. As soon as the play stops, my spotter, and for most of those long years has been Danny Sullivan, and he does an outstanding job. Adam Holtz and sometimes substitutes will tell me just the number. I follow the offense. They follow who makes the tackles, will tell me the number of who made the tackle, and I'd say Tom Joslin, the ball carrier, ran for 7 yards, and he'll tell me the tackle by number 23 of whoever is on the other team, Mike Brown or something.
Yeah. Great. On top of that, you've done a little bit of radio. I know WWOW at one point was doing some play-by-play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I know that.
I'm doing that now with the basketball.
Are you? Okay. And then there was, for a little while, you were doing TV at a different place or something. And how has that all kind of evolved? And what I'm trying to ask you, I guess, in the long run, and we can end the interview with this, is Around Town with Chuck.
Yeah.
How did what you were doing evolve into this show that we're watching
Michael
today?
Bartone, your cousin, my cousin, asked me, because he was with the Cable Advisory Board at the time, and they're looking for people to do shows like this for the community so they can put it on their local access station. He said, would you be interested in doing any kind of show you want to do? And you know me, I'm nervous. I said, I don't know, I'll let you know. I got to thinking 2-3 weeks later. I said, yeah, I think I would be. He said, any idea what kind of show you'd like to do? Yeah, I'd like to interview people. And now, believe it or not, interviewing people to me, I like even better than broadcasting a game.
Yeah.
I really do.
Believe it. That'll do it for this episode of Around Town with Paul. I'll turn it over to Chuck.
Well, before you do that, let's do this. Why don't you sign us off in Italian, and then you go back behind the camera, and then I'll sign us off regularly, and then you can shut the camera.
Allora, grazie per aver guardato questo programma. Per favore, prossimo settimana. See, now I'm losing my Italian. Bad. Prossima settimana facciamo questo un'altra volta e facciamo un altro programma.
Okay, now while he goes and shut the camera off, I'm going to try to translate what I think he said. Thank you for watching another edition of Around the Town with Chuck. I'm the guest today. The host was Paul Guglielmo. Thanks again, everybody.